President Trump just now wrapping up his big Liberation Day tariff event at the White House that he says is aimed at restoring U.S. economic fairness and backed up with some simple logic. Why play fair if they won't?
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. Production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. Trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security. You see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. I call this kind reciprocal. To any company that objects to our common sense reciprocal tariffs, again, reciprocal, back and forth, back and forth. And I call this kind reciprocal. This is not full reciprocal. This is kind reciprocal.
But for the Democrats who are opposed, well, they had their own spin on Liberation Day.
This is not Liberation Day, it's Recession Day.
It could be Obliteration Day.
Big old fat tax day.
It's Recession Day.
It's a day of chaos and cost increases.
Liberation from low prices, yeah.
But is there an art to this deal? Israel is removing all tariffs on American products. Mexico won't go tit for tat with the U.S. on tariffs. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he is open to dropping tariffs. So here you go with this one.
Liberation Day, I call it Termination Day.
I think it's fair that you have tariffs on a whole number of products.
That's right. And we'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off. We are not the problem.
Does President Trump know that you'd be prepared to do that?
He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're willing to take these tariffs off like in the next minute if he said he's taking their tariffs off.
All right. Hey, Harold, it's good to be back around the table with all of you. So I
Now
said
you
it
can't
before
say it.
you did. Let's go to you first then, Harold. I have missed all of you. Go ahead.
Look at him.
So I'd say a couple of things. It is good to be back, and thank you, Dana, for the kind words. I'd say a couple of things. I listened to the president today, and I am a believer that building, manufacturing, conceiving, conceptualizing, making, repairing more things in America is the best thing we can do for our country, not only for jobs, but for our national security. We got a big hint of that during COVID. There were parts of COVID that we agreed with in terms of our response. No one agreed with COVID, but the way we responded to it. And part of the response was to ensure that we wouldn't rely on foreign supply chains, largely Asian supply chains for our pharmaceuticals, to chips, be it potato chips, which I like, or semiconductor chips, which we all need. We saw a shortage of kitchen appliances being able to be produced, cars being able to be produced because we had a shortage of these chips. Joe Biden took a swipe at it and said, look, we're going to give incentives for industry to grow up here. President Trump has said, you know what, I'm going to use trade policy as a way in which to do this. And it's unclear to me how you use trade policy the way he's using it. We've certainly used tariffs in the past in a targeted way, and it has benefited our country to shield industries in our nation that were growing, that needed some help to ensure that nations wouldn't just unload mass amounts of their goods and really drown our industries out, including steel and other things. In this instance, we're talking about putting tariffs on items that we don't produce. So the challenge is, and I think we quoted some people, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, who I agree with sometimes, I don't agree with at times. I thought he was interesting today when he was asked about tariffs. He said, in the long run, it will probably work. The problem is that in the long run, we're probably going to all be dead. So in the short term is all that matters. I think what he was trying to say in his own unique colloquial way is that we don't produce the things that we're trying to tariff against. If we produced all of these things and said, you know what, we're going to protect our industry that produces high-level, high-performing engines. We're going to protect our industry that produces all of these auto parts. That'd be one thing, but we don't have the factories in which to do it. And in order to do it, we're talking 3, 4, 5, maybe as much as 7 years. And then I was glad to hear the president talk a little bit about our workforce. You have to bring workers in as well. So I hope and pray that what the president did today works. It's still unclear to me how it works. And I am prayerful and hopeful that the very people the president wants to protect the most, working class Americans who put him over the finish line, I hope that working class Americans win in the short term and the long term with what the president said today.
Judge, a young friend of mine pointed out that the president has had this position for almost 4 decades. And that in 1987, he ran an ad in the New York Times calling for leaders to have the courage to impose tariffs. And my friend pointed out it was 3 months after he was born. So a long time coming to get to this day.
Yeah, and I think that it's indicative of Donald Trump. And, you know, he has these core beliefs and he delivers on those promises and beliefs. I think the important thing here is where we start. And we start at the point where the president is looking to reset the American economy. And the president sees inequities in certain parts of, you know, the economy, that countries have higher tariffs on us than we have on them. And so the concept is, let's make it reciprocal. And I understand what you're saying, Harold, and you may know more about this than I do. I don't profess to be an economist. But I think that if, as the president says, they end up making products in America, then they're not going to be tariffed. And the leveraging of these tariffs and the threat of tariffs has worked for him in many ways. Companies moving to the United States, countries caving, Canada, Mexico, Israel, Vietnam, which is an incredible, I didn't realize how much business we did with Vietnam. Textiles, and because of its strategic location, natural gas and all that stuff. But, you know, what he's doing is he's targeting the American economy to benefit the blue-collar worker. And he's trying to bring manufacturing back to this country and making sure that since we're the biggest consumer in the world, why aren't we leveraging that power in a way to not only benefit Americans, but to benefit American workers? And look, think about it. You go to Costco, you buy in bulk, you pay less. The same with Sam's. You go there, you buy in bulk, you pay less. We buy in bulk and pay more. And that's what's backwards about it. And we've got to stop treating other countries like they're third world countries and like they need an advantage and, you know, they desperately need our help to have their economies work for them. But I think in the end, I think that the president is doing everything he can to reset the economy. And it makes sense to me.
Greg, I was thinking about how last November people had 2 choices, right? There was somebody who drove up the cost of everything through the so-called Inflation Reduction Act for the sake of climate change, Green New Deal, or somebody who believed that tariffs were a good way to reset manufacturing in the country. And they made their choice, and now we'll find out how it works.
Yeah, it's very confusing when you notice that montage of Democrats. The Liberation Day was very, very confusing in D.C. because usually that means when Jerry Nadler forgets to wear a belt. Canada, apparently they're throwing tariffs on manatee meat and bovine semen, which means The View is very unhappy. Oh. I have to say, it's great watching Trump going on that chart, country by country. I mean, what a difference from Joe Biden, who couldn't find Japan on a map of Japan. So it was nice to see. But you know what? Harold is incredibly naive when it comes to tariffs, and it's almost precious to listen to him prattle on about it. Sometimes I just want to cradle him in my arms and go, there. But so let me explain tariffs to you, Dana, because sometimes you listen. It's all about negotiations. So let's say Dana, on the 5, talks too much. And it eats into my time. So I call my agent, we talk about it. Agent calls the producers and said, look, from now on, Gutfeld gets 5 minutes of uninterrupted show time at the end of the show. Of course, the producers are terrified of Dana because she's a monster, but it throws everybody into a panic. So then there's a meeting, we discuss it, and after a compromise, based on fairness, I decide to withdraw my talk tariff because a compromise has been made in which I gave up something that I never really had to begin with. Trump does this all the time. He creates an asset out of nothing and then trades it. It's amazing. It's amazing. He did that kind of like with Mexico, the implication of military force, and then he removes it. He did it with North Korea. He had this implication like we could bomb you, but we're not. Takes it off the table. Suddenly, we don't hear about North Korea anymore. So you could see that the operating system of Trump is reciprocity. And it's both big and it's small. It could be with countries or it could be with Bill Maher. If you make fun of him, he's going to make fun of you. If you tariff us, we will tariff you. Conversely, if you do him right, he will never forget it. He will do you a solid. He's that loyal. The only thing I would caution against is when people report on it, to keep saying when, like, if Canada changes its mind, to say they caved. Because that's a big obstacle in this. You know, the last thing you want to do is make negotiations seem like a weakness. Cooperation is strong. It's not weak. So if Canada drops its tariffs, if Israel drops its tariff, you don't call it a cave. You call it, oh, it's a compromise. It's a solution.
So you didn't cave on the talk time.
No, it was a solution. And by the way, that proves my point. She didn't really need to say that, did she?
No, because no one thinks that I actually eat into your talk time.
That's why I used you.
I eat into his. Just kidding. Jesse Waters, final
Well,
word.
that's because we don't know if Greg's serious about the talk time or he's just using it as a negotiation. The same thing's happening on Wall Street.
Yes.
They don't know if Trump is going to leave these tariffs up for years or if he's using them to negotiate those other countries to lower their tariffs. And you're already seeing other countries come to the bargaining table. And you've already seen $3 trillion of foreign investment come into this country. And that is more than Joe Biden spent on chips, infrastructure, and the Green New Deal. And that was taxpayer cash. And what did he build with that? He built nothing. Build back better never happened. And so you have to remember, this is also a part of the bigger economic policy of Donald Trump, which is tax and regulation cuts, cheaper energy, border security, and making things in America. So this is focused on Main Street. Wall Street's going to do fine. Herald, this is a Main Street focused concept. And all the people that are saying that tariffs are bad, these are the same people that have overseen the absolute destruction of the middle class over the last 40 years. They say that we can't afford tariffs. We can't afford not to have tariffs. If you look at the last 40 years, the people making, the bottom 50%, they've increased no wealth. The top 50%, top 10% have seen an absolute explosion in wealth. And what was the context there? No tariffs, massive spending, and open borders. So what we need to do now, the world is changing, Dana. We do not need to bail out our allies after World War II. We don't need to fight international communism. Globalism has decimated the heartland. It's why they call it the Rust Belt. We created this monster of China, and they've just preyed on us. They just dump cheap goods into this country, and our Navy guides their cargo ships here. So that makes no sense. It's a national security issue. Like you said, during COVID, we have to make medicine here. If we're going to build ships, we have to do it with American steel. Everything has to be done in this country, especially chips. We can't rely on Taiwan. We're at an arms race here with the Chinese. That has to be clear. We used to be an industrial powerhouse, and that's how we won World War II. In two theaters, the Pacific and the European theater. We became an industrial powerhouse through tariff policy. Today, could we win both of those wars now with the industrial policy we have? No.
You know what we have now? We have the most important, we have the richest, the strongest, and smartest technology sector in the world. We aided that and abetted that the right way. I would agree with you. We have cheated and overlooked working class Americans. But what the president's doing today, as well-intentioned as he is, on April 2nd, 2025, I want to see what your thinking is on April 9th, April 16th. And let's go to my birthday, May 11th. I hope you're right, but I think you're going to be wrong.
Look how he slipped that in.
Happy birthday. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.